And there are differences in what way of Islapshus the light of Torah shine. It depends throughout the Jewish history. It was mostly shining the light of Torah and the effect of it on the world and on people's consciousness, mostly in the first temple. Then when the first temple was destroyed, it was still there in Bayis Sheini, but in a lessened manner, less of a gilui, less of a revelation. The eve of High Adar Sheini, the Chayus of Adar Sheini, so there's definitely a good reason to be besimcha, even more than we experienced until now. And Taka should be a very joyful day, full of simcha, simcha savayet. And I also want to dedicate the shiur to my son Chaim Tzvi, Reb Chaim Tzvi Sheyichyeh ben Chana, who has his birthday tonight and tomorrow. Going back to Tanya, and then we'll do a little bit Dvar Malchus. Dvar Malchus, I mean, Torah from the Rebbe on this coming Shabbos, which is Shabbos Parashas Parah. So, now we are still in Perek Nun Aleph. I gave a general akdama. We already began the Perek, but now I'm giving you a review from the beginning of the Perek itself till where we got to, and then we will look inside. But let's first go back to the beginning of Perek Nun Aleph, which you learn, and just refresh our memories. In this Perek, the Rebbe is going to explain more the words of the Yanuka that were brought before from the Zohar, that with Parashas Balak were brought before in Perek chapter Lamed Hey, 35. The Yanuka is the son, was a young child, I don't know exactly how old, maybe 8, maybe younger. He was the son of Himnuna Saba, whose father was a big tzaddik, a mekubal. And the Rebbe explained also why Dafka, the Zohar, quotes him with the term Yanuka. Yanuka means a child, a small child. One of the explanations that the Rebbe gave is that we should follow the Horah of the Yanuka. We, says the Rebbe, might feel like a Yanuka. I'm like a little child. Who am I to impact the world? And therefore, says the Rebbe, the Zohar calls him the Yanuka, that we should know that these are the words of the Yanuka, that someone who is a child, and we spiritually might be a child or feel like a child, but still we have the responsibility to affect the world and to change the world. In any case, the Yanuka in Parshas Balak talks about the Pasuk, HaChacham in Koheles, Perek Beis. Shlomo HaMelech says, HaChacham einav berosho. The Chacham, his eyes are in his head. L'choira, it's a question. What does this pasuk come to teach us? Does only a Chacham have his eyes in his head? Where are the eyes of other people located? V'chi ban asar inoi de barnash. Where is the location of the eyes of a person? Of course, berosho. So what is Shlomo HaMelech stating in this weird pasuk in Koheles that the Chacham einav berosho? The Chacham, his eyes are in his head. Everybody's eyes are in their head. Ela krach. I'm not reading inside. I'm reading inside there in the Zohar, and the explanation from the Zohar, so you don't have it yet. So I'm just giving you a kdama, and then we'll read inside. So the Zohar says, El akra achi uvadai. That means that surely the intention of the pasuk of Shlomo HaMelech is that Tanan, we learn, and Kiddushin and so on, Lo yahach barnash begilui dereisha arba amos. We learn in the Mishnah that a person should not walk with a bare head 4 amos. We should not walk 4 amos with a bare head. 4 amma is around from the tip of the fingers till the elbow, more or less. So one cannot walk 4 amos begilui dereisha. My timer. Why? The Shechinta sharya al reisha. Because the Shechina dwells upon this head. The head means the Nefesh Elokis, specifically Chochma in the Nefesh Elokis. So the Shechina dwells upon a person's head, that means the Nefesh Elokis, and walking with bare head indicates on prikas ol of the Shechina, on being, how do you call prikas ol in English? Disobedience and rebellion and shrugging the authority of the Shechina versus covering the head that indicates on his batlut, on nullifying oneself and subjugating oneself and having Kabbalah's all. So this fact that the Shechina dwells on the head of every Yid is all the time. The Shechina dwells on the head of the Yid all the time, not only when he does a mitzvah. And therefore there is an isur, the prohibition, to walk 4 amos begilui rosh, with a bare head. The head has to be covered all the time, even when a person does not do a mitzvah. And this is what the pasuk comes to teach us, that hachacham einav berosho. V'chol chacham, says the Zohar, inoi umiloi bereisha inun. Says the Zohar, the inoi umiloi, meaning the whole interest, says the Zohar. And his attention, his giving, and his conversations, his thoughts are given to Behahu, the Sharia, V'kaima al Reshe. So a Chacham is constantly engaging his mind and his attention on the fact that the Shechina is dwelling upon his head. This Or HaShechina that dwells on his head. And the Anuka, the child in the Zohar, continues and says, V'chad inoi taman. And when the eyes of the Chacham are there, which means the attention of a wise person is given to this light of the Shechina that dwells on the head of every Jew, Linda, says the Anuka, one should know, he should know, anyone who wants to give attention to the fact that the Shechina dwells upon his head, Linda, to know, the Hahu Nehora, the Adlik al Reshe, that this light of the Shechina that lights over his head, it's tarech lemashcha. It needs shemen. It needs oil in order to shine, to light, to burn. Why? Begin the gufa de barnash iu psila. Says the Zohar in Aramaic, the gufa, the guf, the body of barnash, of a person, iu psila, that's like the wick. So the guf of a Yid is like the wick, that the light of the Shechina is attached to. Unehora adlik le'ela, says the Zohar, and the light of the Shechina lights above. So just as the teva, the nature of Esh, is to be drawn upwards, and the way to hold it is by lighting the wick, so too Beruchnius, the Guf Gashmi holds the Or Shechina down. If not the Guf Gashmi, the Shechina would go back to Atzilus, to be subsumed in Or and Sof. The fact that the Shechina dwells down here on a person, that's because of the body of the person that serves like a wick. But just as Begashmius, a wick is not enough, because it gets consumed very quickly. In addition to the fact that the light of the wick is black and not clear and pure, we need oil. That the oil will continue to burn through the wick and enable this light of the Sheina to shine above. So in order for the light of the Sheina to continuously shine upon the body and light upon the body, and not only the Nefesh Elokis. So we need oil. And now says the Zohar, Ushlomo Malka tzavach ve'amar. Shlomo, King Solomon, cried out and said that one has to make sure that that light should continue to shine bright, begilui. And for that sake, cried out Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon, V'shemen al roshcha al yichsar. There shouldn't lack oil upon your head. So you have to make sure that you provide oil for the light, the flame that brightly shines upon your head. Because that light that shines upon his head needs oil. So begashmius, the need of oil is because the material of the wick is coarse, too coarse to be completely subsumed in the fire. Adrabah, the wick is usually a different material from the fire and it darkens the fire to the extent that you can, even if you look at the flame of fire, you see that the part of the flame that is close to the wick is dark because of the wick. The wick darkens the flame and it's called Nehora Uchma. It's called a dark light because it engages with the wick, which is dark. It's not a lighting material. And therefore we need oil, shemen. Shemen is a refined material and it's suitable for fire and it gets consumed in fire and completely transformed to fire. And through the shemen, the oil, the light of the candle is zach v'naki, is pure and clear. And so too beruchnius, spiritually as well. The psila, the wick, is the body. The body is coarse, is corporeal, is material, is not a keli for the Or HaShechina. And therefore, we need something which is dark and ruchni, refined and subtle, that should be a keli to Or HaShechina. Lichora, we discussed it already in the past. I'm not going to make it. I'm skipping some discussions for various reasons, but one reason is we already had this discussion. But the Anuka, so you might think, well, the neshama is a good wick. No, the Anuka says, no, what is the oil? What is the oil that enables to the light of the Shechina to light over a person's head? The inun uvdan tevan. These are maisim toivim, which means mitzvahs, the deeds of mitzvahs. Ve'aldo hachacham einav berosho. And about this, says the Zohar, it says that the Chacham, Shlomo HaMelech says that the Chacham, his eyes are on his head, are on his head. Why? Because the Chacham is constantly interested and engaged in what dwells upon his head, and therefore he's constantly, worried, not worried literally, but constantly make sure that oil will not be lacking. And what does it mean? That it should be constantly ma'asim tovim done. That he should be constantly engaged in mitzvahs in order to keep the light of the Shechina that dwells upon him, that which should shine upon his body. This is, until here is the expression, is the conversation, not conversation, the statement that the holy Anuka, the holy child in the Zohar, in Parashas Balak made. Which means the Anuka says that the Shechina dwells upon the head of a person, and in order to be able to shine and light upon the head of a person, there is a need for oil, because the body of a person is like the wick, and the light of the Sheina shines on top, and therefore we need oil in order for the light to shine. And the oil is the Maisim Toivim Maiseh HaMitzvahs. This is the explanation of the Zohar. And from this, the Alter Rebbe concludes, and he brought this statement of the Zohar in Perek Lamed Hey 35, that the main thing in Avodas Hashem is not necessarily the Kavana with Ava and Yira, but Dafka Maise, Limud HaTorah and Kiyum HaMitzvos b'Maise b'Poal, in actuality. That's the oil that holds the light of the Sheina upon the person's head. And he explains why none other of the created beings can be that oil, because there is no comparability between creations and God. And even our nefesh, even our neshama, it still has a certain metzius. And therefore, the best keli for the Hashras HaShechina are Maaseh HaMitzvahs, because Torah and Mitzvahs are the pnimius of the Ratzon of Hashem without hester panim, without anything concealing it or blocking it. So they are the best kelim for Hashras HaShechina on the person. And in this itself, between Torah and Mitzvahs, there is an emphasis even more on Mitzvahs than Torah. Because learning Torah is dealing with the higher aspects of the nefesh, machshava and dibur and so on. But doing mitzvahs, we're doing mitzvahs with the nefesh achiyunis, with the goof, with physical objects in the world, and so on. And therefore, doing mitzvahs is very important. That's the main, doing Torah mitzvahs, the Maaseh b'Poal, that's the main oil that keeps the light of the Sheina shining upon the consciousness of every person. Together with that, as we learned in the past, as explained in chapter 38 until 40, including, the Alter Rebbe explains the other side of the coin, that it's very important that Torah and mitzvahs should be done with Avas Hashem and Yiras Hashem. And this is a cardinal part of the divine intention and goal in making a home for Hashem b'tachtonim. Because in order for the home of Hashem not to be like a body without a soul, which means that the home of Hashem should not be dark and cold, rather it should have a neshama to it, it should be lichtig, it should be lit up, and it should be warm. We need also Avas Hashem and Yiras Hashem, the kavana that we invest, and the emotions and the personal emotions that we invest in Maaseh HaMitzvahs. And therefore, Ava ve'Yira, as we learned, are like the wings that carry the mitzvahs up to the higher worlds, where Gilui Elokus is much more apparent. Until eventually there will be an entire Gilui Elokus down here in our world, of God Himself. So therefore, in the later prakim that we learned, Mem Aleph till the end of Nun, which means 41 till the end of 50, we learned, the Alter Rebbe taught us how to create Avas Hashem and Yiras Hashem, how to integrate that part of relationship with God, of love and fear of God. Beginning from Reshis HaAvodah, the beginning of Avodah, in Ikara, V'Shorsha, the main part of aspect, element of Avodas Hashem. And this, the root of Avodas Hashem is Kabbalas Ol, and Yiras Hashem on the lowest level, through reflecting on the fact that Hine Hashem Nitzav Alav, that Hashem is watching upon each and every person. That's the lowest Isboinenus. And He watches to see what you're doing. Not because He's a punitive God that waits to catch you in your failure and punish you. Rather, you are so significant. And after all the explanations, higher and higher and higher meditations, how to reach Avas Hashem and Yiras Hashem. In this Perek, the Rebbe comes back to the words of the Yanuka about Hashras HaShechina that is done dafka through the Maaseh HaMitzvos. And he explains here what is the inyan of Hashras HaShechina bechlal, and also that the Shechina dwells upon a person. And why the Shechina dwells upon a person through doing mitzvahs. And the conclusion of this explanation is that Torah and mitzvahs are like the moichin. They are like the brains. They are like the center and the source of life of all worlds. That just as the brain is the source of life of the entire body, the source of light and vitality to the entire body, more than that even, as we'll learn further on. So too, through godliness, through malchus, invested in Torah, the worlds can be created and receive their life force from Elokus, from godliness. So it's all done through Torah and mitzvahs. And there are differences in what way of Islapshus the light of Torah shined. It depends throughout the Jewish history. It was mostly shining the light of Torah and the effect of it on the world and on people's consciousness, mostly in the first temple. Then when the first temple was destroyed, it was still there in Bayis Sheini, but in a lessened manner. Less of a gilui, less of a revelation. And then there is also the most concealment is the time of galus, of exile, when we don't have the Beis Hamikdash. We know the Beis Hamikdash Sheini, as we learned this morning. Beis Hamikdash Sheini is the second temple. The first temple, when we brought a korban, every day the Kohen had to make sure that there's enough wood, and there's enough fire on the ma'aracha, on the mizbeach, on the altar. But at the same time, the first temple, every day when we brought the animals to be sacrificed, a fire came down from heaven in the shape of a lion and consumed the korban, consumed the sacrifice. Second temple, that fire did not come down anymore. It was a lower level of revelation. And even though the akrava was still kosher, the sacrifice was still kosher, because there was still eish min hahediot, eish from below, that was brought by the Kohanim, and that represents the labor, the work of the person himself, of korban, of sacrificing something of himself in order to come closer to Hashem. And that is enough to make the korban kosher, even when there is no esh milamayla, there is no inspiration and revelation from above. But that avodas Hashem is still, and korban is still kosher. But there is a special maila in mitzvahs, because mitzvahs are the most, how shall I say, the most cardinal element in transforming the nefesh habahamis to kedusha. And they have the biggest impact, because they are done with nefesh habahamis, they are done with the guf, and they are done with materials from the world. And therefore, dafka the mitzvahs have the effect to mamshich, to draw down the light of the Shechina into the world. And that's why it's important. It's that this home, as we know already, should be a dira b'tachtonim. That means the tachtonim should have an active part in creating this divine home. And that's why it's so important to explain that the Torah is the source of life of all nivraim, of all creation. Because in the Torah, the malchus of Hashem, the kingship, the divine energy that enables the creation of worlds, the existence of worlds, and is the source of the world, is invested in milubeshes and clothes in the Torah in order to create and to guide the world. And from this, this lowest world is a kli to the light of Torah, and is shayach to Torah and mitzvot b'pnimius. Because the whole chayus, we need to understand that the whole, in this parak, the Rebbe is trying to explain to us that the whole chayus and the hisavus, the whole life force, including the divine energy that brings us into existence, our creation coming to existence, yesh me'ayin, all comes from the light of Torah. So through this, that the Torah and mitzvahs are the source of life of all worlds, now all worlds are becoming a keli to elokus, to godliness. And now there is an inner shaychus, an inner connection between the worlds and Hashem. And so the tachton, the lower reality, becomes a keli and a home to Hashem. First, we become a keli to the lower levels of elokus. So we start with malchus, different levels of malchus. That Shechina, the aspect of Hashem that is enclosed in the world and can be revealed. But eventually, our world is becoming a home not only to the Shechina, but also a home to the essence of God itself. So now let's read, this is the Akdama to Perek Nun Aleph, and now we can read quickly, because we are holding by page Ayin Beis, which is 131, I think, by you. No, 143 maybe. But let's start to read quickly. Vehine, Perek Nun Aleph, 51. לתוספס ביאור לשון הינוקה דלעיל, to explain more the explanation, to explain more the lashon, the expression of the Yanuka, of the child in the Zohar, that is mentioned before. צריך לבאר תחילה להבין קצת עניין השראת השכינה. We have to bring a little explanation, says the Rebbe, in order to explain a little bit the inyan of the dwelling of godliness, of the Shechina, שהייתה שורה בבייס קודש קודשים, that used to dwell in the Holy of Holies in the temple. וכן כל מקום השראת השכינה, מה עניינו? And so any place of השראת השכינה. We know that a shul is a base mikdash me'at. It's also the Shechina is shor in a shul. And any place that is Hashrat HaShechina, and we know the Shechina, even the Shechina of the Beis HaMikdash, how much more so the Shechina of the Beis HaMikdash, Eina Zaza Mimkoma, doesn't move away from its place. Nevertheless, Shechina, at the same time, Shechina travels with the Jewish people. Wherever they go, the Shechina goes with them. So, Kol Makom Hashrat HaShechina, any place of Hashrat HaShechina, the dwelling of the Shechina, Ma'anyano. What does it mean? And here we have a question. Halo melo kol haaretz kvodo, v'leis asar panui minei. Isn't there a pasuk that says melo kol haaretz kvodo? That the whole earth is filled with the glory of God? And leis asar panui minei? Says Kabbalah, says the Zohar, there is no place that is vacant of him. So what does it mean that there is a place where the Shechina dwells? Isn't he everywhere? אך העניין כדכתיב ומבשרי אחזה אלוקה. In Eob, it says, from my own psychology, from the way I am structured, I can understand and witness godliness. שכמו שנשמת האדם, היא ממלאה כל רמ"ח איברי הגוף מראשו ועד רגלו. So on one hand, you see, how do you know if a person is alive or not? Okay? If a person is alive or not, you need to know it. Does he have the neshama still in the body or not? So if the neshama is in the body or not, that doesn't matter if it's the hand or the shoulder or the foot or the brain. If there is still life, then the neshama is memala kol ramach evre haguf mirosho v'ad raglo. The neshama, to make a person alive, the foot is not more alive or less alive than another part. Is the neshama equally enlivens and animates the whole body on one hand. So the whole body is either alive or not alive. So either the body has chayus or not. אף על פי כן, nevertheless, we see that עיקר משכנה והשראתה היא במוחו. That the main place where the neshama dwells, and there are two terms here, is in his mind. in his brain. ומהמוח מתפשטת לכל האיברים. And from the brain, it spreads to all the organs. So you, so to speak, see two contradictory things. And the truth is that they are both true, and they are not contradictory. That on one hand, the neshama is memales kol haguf, fills the whole body equally. If the body is alive, not alive, no, it's alive. There's no difference between one organ and the other. On the other hand, you see that the ikar mishkan, the ikar dwelling place of the neshama is in the brain. And from the brain, it spreads to all the evarim. And next time we will explain exactly how. So we have two expressions here. Ikar mishkana ve'hashra'ata. Mishkan ve'hashra'a. So really there are two life forces, so to speak, that come into the body at the same time. One comes from the nefesh itself, from etzem nefesh, and that's equal all over. And then the other one comes from the way etzem nefesh is a source of what will be later on, when it's in the body, will be the kochos nefesh. Different powers of the nefesh. That, which means that the nefesh itself is a plain, formless, undescribed oneness, that you cannot find any kochos there. On the other hand, from where do all the kochos come? All the powers that we have, the intellectual power, the emotional power, the physical power, from where are they all coming? They are coming from the nefesh. So in the essence of the nefesh, they are not there at all in any mitzius, in any shape or form. But then the nefesh is allocating special energy and vitality to the body. Potentially. And the center of that energy that is specially designated for the body, and then later on specifically for each organ of the body, the center of that is in the brain. And that's called mishkana. Mishkana v'hashra'ata. The mishkan, where the neshama dwells, which means it's only that aspect of the soul that is shaykh to the body. The mishkan, where it dwells, it's in the brain. And from the brain is dispensed to and spreads to all the, extended to all the organs. But then there is the essence of the soul that keeps sending chayos to the body. And that is hashra'asa. Hashra'a means to dwell, not in, but over, to hover. That's what the term is hashra'a. The etzem nefesh is there, but you cannot call it shochen. Shochen means, shchina means dwells in, within. And shoreh means to dwell above. And therefore, Etzem HaNefesh is always above and equally, because it's not shaykh to any place or any space or any form, and therefore it's equally all over. But the aspect of the energy of the nefesh that is shaykh to the guf, that center is in the body, dwells in the brain. And from there spreads to the organs, as we will explain next time. And that will help us to understand the analog, which is the Shechina, where the Shechina, the center of the Shechina is. So whether it is in Kodesh HaKodashim, in the Holy of Holies of the temples, or it is where the main center of Yidden and Yiddishkeit is. The Shechina travels with the Jewish people as they go through the world. And we'll talk about it next time, Be'ezus Hashem. And now we will conclude a little bit with few words from the Rebbe about Parashas Parah that is coming. Only few nekudas, few points, because we don't have enough time. There are some opinions regarding Shulchan Aruch that just as there is a chiyuv, Lemaise we don't, the psak is not like that, but there are some opinions that the, how shall I say, the intensity and the importance of the kriya of this coming Shabbos, which is Parashas Parah. We read in Parashas Chukas about the ashes of the red heifer, the red cow, that was made in order to purify us from Tumas Hames, from the impurity of the dead. It was brought up and read way before Rosh Chodesh Nisan, so to remind us all to purify ourselves, so we should be ready to bring Korban Pesach in Beis HaMikdash. And that is Parashas Parah. So there are some opinions that the severity of Parashas Parah is as similar or identical to the severity of Parashas Zachor. And therefore, some hold that there is a chiyuv, there's an obligation to be in shul, even for women. Lemaise, it's not a psak, but it's a very important Shabbos. It seems something interesting, brings the Rebbe, that needs an explanation. We are told that the Efer HaParah, the ashes of the red heifer, with the ashes that remained after burning that red cow, was divided to 3 parts. As it says in the Mishnah, and the Rambam brings the halacha, that ashes was divided to 3 parts. One was put in the chel, around the outside court of the mikdash, of the temple. One in the Har Mishcha, in the mountain of oil, and one is divided, mischalek, to lechol mishmaros, is given to all the shifts of the Kohanim in Beis HaMikdash. That one that is given to all the shifts in the Beis HaMikdash, the Kohanim used to use it to Mekadesh, from that ashes to Mekadesh from it. And this that was given in Har Mishcha, the Yisrael, the Jewish people, used to sprinkle from that, from those ashes. And this, and the third part that was placed in the chel outside of the temple was muchan or mutzna, was kept away and put away and hidden for future generations. Ve'aisa le'adas bnei Yisrael le'mishmeres. That the third part was kept from cow to cow. For the future generations, it was meant to be kept away le'mishmeres, to be kept for future generations. And so too they used to take from each and every parah. Altogether, there are 9 paros were made so far. They used to take from each and effort from each and every cow that they burn and put in the chel. And says the Rambam, Teisha paros adumus nasu. There were 9 red cows that were made and burnt. Mishenistavu b'mitzvah zu ad shecharab habayis b'shenis. From the time they were first mitzvah, they were first commended by this mitzvah of burning the Parah Aduma and creating the ashes by Moshe Rabbeinu. There were 9 paros that were made since then until the second temple was destroyed and we couldn't have anymore the sprinkling of the holy waters. The first Moshe Rabbeinu made. The second parah, the second cow, Ezra Sofer made. And then 7 cows were made from Ezra until the destruction of the second temple. And the second one will be made by Melech HaMashiach. Me'era yigale amen ken yehi ratzon. So the Rebbe says we have to understand what is the chidush here about this mitzvah of Parah Aduma, that we have to use the ashes not only locally as it happens to purify people from Tuma, rather we have to keep it lemishmeres ledoros. We have to keep it for generations for the future and put it away. That it should be always available. And some opinions say that they were actually mixed, that every parah that were made after the parah of Moshe Rabbeinu, its ashes were mixed with the previous paros, all the way to the first parah of Moshe Rabbeinu. So it's actually the first ashes from Moshe Rabbeinu was carried through all the 9 paros. And it's still there. It's still there. It's still hidden, but it's still there. It's kept, physically kept. And it will be revealed. When Mashiach comes, we'll make the 10th one. So we need to understand what is this special thing about the ashes of the Parah Aduma and the whole thing. Unfortunately, it's a beautiful sikha, but we don't have time. But just the main nekudos, that the process of preparing the ashes of the Parah Aduma to purify the dead, the tuma, the impurity of the dead, is called chukas haTorah. Not chukas haParah, but chukas haTorah. The whole Torah, it reflects the dynamic of the whole Torah and the effect of the Torah. And the Rebbe says that the general Maaseh haParah is composed of 2 elements. One element is the element of fire, the sreifas haParah, burning of the cow. The second one is natan alav mayim chayim el keili. The ashes of the Parah Aduma nosein efer al pnei hamayim. They have to be fresh water, spring water in a keili, and on top of that, the ashes of the Parah Aduma was placed, and it was mixed together. And the 2 of them, the water, the fresh water, the mayim chaim, together with the ashes, used to be sprinkled and purify the tumas hames, the impurity of the dead. Generally, the Rebbe says that this thing of the water and the fire represents, I'm sorry it's so short, but represents 2 inyanim in avodas Hashem, ratzov vashov. The whole Torah operates like this. Mitzvahs operate like this. Mitzvahs aseh is shuv, mitzvahs lo aseh is ratzov. What do you mean ratzov vashov? The ratzov is the avodah to transcend the world and to unite with the divine. And the shuv means bring the divine down to this physical world. So the Ratzor is represented by the Efer of the Parah, by the burning of the cow, the fire, like fire wants to go up. When we want to transcend and leave the physical world behind us and unite and be subsumed in the divine, that's like the fire that wants to go up to its source. And the Mayim Chaim, is the living water. The Mayim represents like wine that goes, water that goes from up down. So too the Shuv represents bringing Elokus into the world. And the whole Torah and Ma'aseh Mitzvahs, the life of a Jew is finding the right balance between the two. Within Torah and within Mitzvahs, Mitzvahs themselves are divided to two. Lo taseh naseh, Ratzor v'shov. And all this is done, so that's the end of preparing the water that was sprinkled with these ashes, and that was kept from Moshe Rabbeinu, from the first Rebbe, and continues in Rebbe of every generation. Because what does it mean that we're getting ready to be purified from Tumas HaMeis? What does it mean, Tumas HaMeis? Tumas HaMeis means that what is Maves? Atem hadlikim b'Hashem Elokechem chayim hayom kulchem. You that are cleaving and are attaching yourself to Hashem your God, you are alive. What is the opposite of life? Being disconnected from God. So it is the power of the Moshe and the tzaddikim of all generations, the mishmeres, that we look back. Always, when we forge forward, we always look back to the previous generations and tzaddikim in each generations, all the way, the original power of Moshe Rabbeinu that helped us, that he was the original Noisen HaTorah, that with the power of Torah, we can stay attached to Hashem and therefore stay alive, rather than being disconnected, God forbid, and being subjected to the opposite of life. So this Shabbos, we are preparing ourselves to be purified from Tumas HaMeis, from any disconnection from Elokus, and having in mind that it's done through the Moshe Rabbeinu, the original Moshe Rabbeinu, and the Moshe Rabbeinu in every generation, the Rebbe in every generation, and it was continued through Ezra and through the temples, all the way to Bayis Sheini, the end of Bayis Sheini, and Mashiach Tzidkenu is now waiting to burn the last and the 10th Parah, which will completely free us from any disconnection from God, so we live forever. And the inyan of Maves, of Hepech Chaim, of the opposite of life, will be completely at Ruach Hatuma Avir Min Haaretz, are removed from the land completely, and therefore we will live forever, and death will not be an experience anymore, and life will be eternal. And so it should be tonight, and especially what was studied tonight should stand for the schus of those who need to be freed from captivity right away, and those who need to have success in fighting the evil, the Amalek of our time should have success, and immediately we should have the Geula Amitis V'Ashleima, and this Shabbos we'll already dance in a pure way in Beis HaMikdash, and in a way of Yechi HaMelech, that everyone will see the Moshe Rabbeinu of our generation leading the Geula Amitis V'Ashleima by being Mashiach Tzidkenu. Take a miyad mamash now.